For number 20 through 23, essentially all of these problems are factoring and solving problems. They might not all say factoring, but that's what they essentially are. You have to factor the problem to get the answer. So again, we're going to factor from 20 to 23. So for the first one, 20 is pretty straightforward. It's just x factor. There's a 1 in front of x squared. So that means that 1 times 28 is 28. And we're trying to get to negative 11. So our factors would be 4 and 7. And they both would have to be negative to get to the negative 11. But if you multiply two negatives, we get to the positive 28. So now we need to write them in factored form. And it says to solve this, so I'm going to go ahead and set each part equal to 0. And we know it's just the opposite. So if we add 4 to the other side, x is 4. If we add 7 to the other side, we get positive 7. So my two solutions are 4 and 7. For 21, it's the same thing. Find the x-intercepts of the graph of the equation. We just make the y a 0, and we're doing x factor again. So we have 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. So that would go on the top of our x. And then we're trying to get to negative 2. So the only way to get there would be 2 and 4. But our 4 needs to be negative. Okay, so now we have our factors. We can write it in factored form. But we need to find the x-intercepts, which just means like find these x's like we did here. So we're going to set these equal to 0 and solve. So here we would subtract 2 to both sides. X is negative 2. Here we would add 4 to both sides and we get 4. So x equals negative 2 and 4. In number 22, we can do cross products here. So first I'm going to put x times my expression, x plus 7. And then I have this 2 times 4, which is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute the x. So I have x times x is x squared. X times 7 is 7x equals 8. But we're not in standard form, so let's move that 8 over to make it negative 8. Okay, so now we're in factored form, and I want to factor this. So negative 8 trying to get to 7. So we've got 1 and 8, 2 and 4. So we're going to go 1 times 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. So now we can write this in factored form. And then we can solve. So for the first one, x minus 1 equals 0. We would add 1 to both sides and get 1. Okay, we also can take 8, x plus 8 equals 0. And if we subtract the 8 to both sides, we get negative 8. Now, 23 is very similar. It's just bottoms up because that number right there is bigger than 1. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. We're trying to get to negative 5. So we can't do that. This doesn't work. We have 1 times 8, 2 times 4. Neither of those work. So then our alternate method is the quadratic formula. So this is A, B, and C. And we're going to plug it into the quadratic formula. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So here's B, a negative 5. If I take a negative into the negative, it becomes positive 5. Then I have B squared, which is negative 5 squared, minus the 4, times A, which is 2, times C, which is negative 4. Then we have 2 times a, which is 2. So over here we have a 5 plus or minus. Negative 5 squared is 25. Okay. If we multiply negative 4 times 2, that's negative 8. And negative 8 times a negative 4 is a positive 32. And then that would be over 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. So then lastly here we have 5 plus or minus. Okay, well 25 plus 32 is 57. 57 can't break down, so we're just going to leave it in radical form here. So x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 57 divided by 4.